an honor
to be here.
to be here.
Puerto Rico has also joined in occupying. All right. The people united. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Let me repeat. My name is Alicia Rodriguez. I am a former Puerto Rican political prisoner. I am honored to be here. And I also want everyone to know that Puerto Rico has also joined and participated in occupying.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico is a colony. Puerto Rico was invaded in 1898. If in this moment people throughout the world are joining the Occupy Now movement, Puerto Rico has been occupied since 1898 when it was invaded. We actually know what it feels like to have no political, social, and more than anything, economic autonomy. We know what it feels like to be subjected to the interest of multinational corporations and the interest of the military. Some history. We were, before the invasion, an island with a diverse agricultural economy. I think that says a lot. It was an economy which was a sustainable economy.
I'm sorry.
We know that a country that cannot feed its people is really dangerous. We are an island where all the borders have been closed down. Anything that comes in and anything that goes out is controlled by the United States. We do not control our airports. We do not control our shipping lanes. Anything that goes in and out, we are forced to pay outrageous amount of money, which means that things that come in are priced at a much more exorbitant amount. That is occupation. Occupying our land, transforming us from an agrarian economy back in the 1930s and 50s, forcing us to leave our land. And if you look around, from the 40s on, Puerto Ricanos began to migrate. They left their homeland, not because they wanted to, it was because they had no control of the economy. And we all know that as families, we need to feed our loved ones. We need money for our homes, we need money for clothing, we need money for education, we need money for everything. Puerto Rico is dependent on foreign corporations for almost everything. My father immigrated in the 1950s. He had what I consider possibly the most noble profession, and that was working the land. And just a tidbit of information, during the Depression, Puerto Rico was able to subsist because we did have farmers. Many of the people probably didn't have roast beef, filet mignon, but they had enough to survive from what they were able to produce with their bare hands. Corporations came in, such as the pharmaceuticals, with the promise that they were going to give us lots of jobs. What they have given us is lots of pollution. You can look in history and find out what has been the damage of pharmaceuticals. We are the capital of pill production. You can ask yourself, does that mean that the Puerto Ricanos can purchase medication at a much more cheaper rate? Hell no. You probably get the medication much more cheaper than we do. But in the long run, what do these big corporations leave us? They leave us with our water tables contaminated. These pharmaceuticals cannot operate without a vast quantity of water. Where do they get it from? They don't want it from outside the coast because seawater is not what they need. They go down into the belly of our island and they take out our fresh water in an abundant amount. The island of Vieques, how many know about the struggle of Vieques? Did they come in with our permission? No. No, they did not. They forced out at least 3/4 of that population off that island of Puerto Rico. For 60 years, they occupied it. For 60 years, the people of that island constantly lived vibration movements. And why? Because the United States, along with its NATO allies, were invited. It was an island. It was warm 365 days a year. That's how they advertised it. But in the meantime, there was a huge amount of islanders that were developing cancer. The Viequenses subsisted on fishing. A lot of them couldn't do it. A lot of them could not find a means of staying on the island and providing for the most sacred institution, I think, on this globe. The most sacred institution is the family. Families were broken. Throughout the course of those 60 years, a lot of them are not alive today. On YouTube, it has allowed me to keep myself up to date with the Occupy Now movement. Everywhere, it is the same cry of democracy, the same cry of justice, the same cry of equality. Everyone wants a decent way of living. Whether it is in Chile, whether it's in Argentina, whether it is in other European countries like it is in New York, and even here. There might not be in front of me a massive amount of people, but I know that the cry of inequality reverberates throughout. I am pleased. I come from the period of the 60s and the 70s. I come from a period where, when we were against the Vietnam War, we left those university classrooms and we began to say, yes, I do want an education. I do want a profession. But I also know that on the other side of that wish, there are other people that are in need. And that's what I see today. Doesn't have to be in numbers. It could be also women and children that are probably in dire straits right now. Those are the voice of the voiceless. And it is people who are in front of me now and have walked through this area for many days and continue to walk through these Occupy Now zones throughout the world that are saying our struggle is a just struggle. That this struggle is not for personal gain, it's not for profit. It isn't. It is for life. It's for making sure that we as human beings have the human right to live with decency, to live with the most basic resources so that we are not humiliated and dependent on anything else but ourselves. I said that Puerto Rico is occupied. Yes, it is. We've been occupied for 113 years, and we have a long history of resistance. May not be the same type of resistance that is here, but it is in that same vein. Many of us have confronted years of incarceration. Many of us have been targeted by the FBI. Many of us have lost our lives because we have been murdered. None of our heroes have done it for personal gain. And in our situation in particular as Puerto Ricans, what we struggle for is a sustainable economy, not a dependent economy. And we strive for our independence. Puerto Rico, in the eyes of the U.S. Supreme Court, have stated, Puerto Rico belongs to the United States, but we are not part of the United States. That is occupation. That is telling us that these multi-corporations, these banks, have had for over 113 years the freedom to exploit us as workers, the freedom to set up corporations with the Puerto Rican government laying out its infrastructure. In many instances, with free water, with free electricity, free roads built for them, all in the interest of, I don't want to get gross here.
Come on, get gross.
It's okay.
Bring it on.
We can take it.
All in the interest of prostituting themselves. Not the Puerto Rican people, but its politicians. And instead of looking at the interest of its people, it is catering to a form of economy that is destructive. On the island of Vieques alone, the cancer rate is 25% higher than it is here in the United States. The island of Vieques sits on the eastern side of Puerto Rico. If any of you ever watch the Weather Channel, and if ever you're interested in seeing about hurricanes, I know Philadelphia is further up north, but the hurricanes originate from the western side of Africa, and they move in a westerly fashion. Vieques was bombarded, and we still don't know everything that these NATO warfare, war games were using. Vieques was bombarded from the air, it was bombarded from the water, and it was also bombarded from the land. It does not take much to know that a lot of times the U.S. government, military government, does not let you know what its secret operations are. Puerto Rico has always served as a testing ground. They tested Agent Orange before it went to Vietnam. They tested Agent White, which nobody hears about, but we know about because there's residue of that on Puerto Rican soil. We women were also used as guinea pigs. Nowadays, all these contraceptives that are taken for granted, prior to that, who was it tested on before it came here to the United States? It was done by against the women of Puerto Rico. A lot of times they would go in to birth their children and they would come out sterilized. Did they ask permission? No, not at all. Not at all. That's one of many. One of many. Vieques cannot be forgotten because there was a lot of military testing. The people of Vieques and also the people of Puerto Rico have managed to shut down that U.S. naval base that was the biggest in the Western Hemisphere on that small little island of Vieques. That was done in 2003. But has military left the island of Puerto Rico? No. They've set up more bases. They moved out of Vieques and now they're on the island of Puerto Rico. And I can tell you that it should not catch us by surprise that they continue to do secret military testing. So why do Puerto Ricans struggle? Why throughout the course of resistance have there been so many political prisoners? I shared with you that the invasion took place in 1898. Decade after decade since then, there have been political prisoners that have stood up and have said, I am not going to be silenced. U.S. Congress, the Supreme Court says we are part of, but we don't belong. That really is an imbalance. That is inhumane. The United Nations has clearly stipulated in their resolutions that colonialism is a crime against humanity. So for me, who did almost 20 years, alongside many other Puerto Ricans, ex-political Puerto Rican political prisoners, it means a lot to see Occupy Now birthing a challenge against that 1% that have and continue to exploit the 99%. It is a form of international solidarity. I love the fact that this technology is being utilized to disseminate and educate, disseminate information on the spot, and allow each other to bridge that gap. That even though there are fronteras, territorial boundaries that I am not against, but that we can look each other and that we could feel that this might be a huge struggle. But through the airwaves, when you see that it is happening in other areas, you don't feel so hopeless. There is power in the people. Power in the people. Just stating that back in the period of the 60s and the 70s brought on deep repression. This movement is very challenging. And I say to myself, looking back at the 60s and the 70s and the different methods throughout the United States and also throughout the world, this is one voice. It is nothing other than that. It is that human cry. That's something that cannot be grasped. I have a mic. Somebody can come and shut it down, turn it off. But the mere presence and the fact that it ripples throughout, and that I can come from Puerto Rico and I can stand here with my own history of resistance, my people's history of resistance, and say that in Puerto Rico also there is resistance. The governor in power now, the colonial governor, we do not have a president. The highest office on that colony is a governor. The power comes from the United States. We have a colonial constitution, but the last word comes from Congress, and the President of this United States can veto anything that, any law passed by the Puerto Rican legislature. We do not have control of our airports. We do not have control of, it's not our postal system. We had our money, but after the invasion, they imposed the US dollar and they devalued our peso. What did it mean? Even at that early part, we lost land. People could not, even businesses. So once again, occupation for us means we have a long, because prior to U.S. colonialism, it was Spanish colonialism. Puerto Rico has not had its independence for over 500 years. So occupation, we carry it. We have a deep, soulful understanding of what that means. And as a result, it has caused massive migration. Caused it back in the 40s and the 50s, and it's causing it now. What's happening here in the United States at this moment is worse on the island of Puerto Rico. Over 30,000 workers lost their jobs. The governor said, we'll let the private sector take care of it. The private sector cannot take care of it. So if I tell you a figure of 30,000 people that lost their jobs back in 2007, you can be guaranteed that it is over at this point right now, 60,000. A lot of those have been forced to migrate. Students, last year, were told that they would have to pay an $800 increase in their tuition. $800 here, I don't know. Who can afford $800 additional dollars? It was being imposed on university students who, at that time, were probably paying the lowest tuition, because it's in the private universities that the expense is even much higher. That was last year. As a result of it, over 10,000 students in just one university alone were not allowed to enroll because they could not afford the $800. Which means that there's a young person who started their studies and and unfortunately, because they don't have the money, are not going to get an education. They can't afford to migrate here. They can't afford to leave, pay an airfare, go to another state, and deal with housing, food expenses, books, and whatnot. So occupation means a lot to them. A lot of them participated. I think it was October 15th. Was that the International Day of Occupy Now? Well, if you were to go into the internet, you would see that there are union workers, there are students, there are teachers, and throughout the whole economical strata, you will see that Puerto Ricans said, I also want to be in solidarity with Occupy Now.
Yeah.
What happens now?
Questions. People might have questions. Comments.
What are the top 3 exports of Puerto Rico? How does Puerto Rico make its money in the international economy?
How does Puerto Rico make? You mean the corporations?
Yeah.
It's not the people.
Thank you.
Yeah. Pharmaceuticals? Big time. Electronic devices? Bags for laboratories, does that make sense? Bags, plastic stuff, okay, for serums and for collecting blood and whatnot. Puerto Rico has a skilled labor force, strong skilled labor force. Those workers make less on the island of Puerto Rico than they make here. But we also know that corporations are going to go where the labor is cheap. In Puerto Rico, they have to pay a so-called low wage. So a lot of those manufacturing jobs, Haynes, which means that a large portion of the manufacturing jobs have left and gone elsewhere. Where have they gone? Haiti? Where else?
All right.
The Dominican. Where they lock up their workers, make them work long hours under inhumane conditions, probably even, violating child labor laws. Anywhere where they can do it, you know what I mean, and get away with it and produce mega profits. Paying workers miserable salaries. So that, in addition to those 30,000 workers, also have suffered the consequences.
Puerto Rican soldiers beside me. Can you explain the ties between the U.S. military and how they get troops out of Puerto Rico?
He's asking, will I kind of like make a... U.S. exploitation of Puerto Ricans to fight U.S. imperialism. Thank you. At the time of the invasion, there was no war. But in 1917, World War I broke out. We were an occupied nation. They saw our men as potential soldiers. So they imposed U.S. citizenship status, and they forced our men to go off to war. But even then, there was a consciousness among Puerto Rican youth, and they said, that is not our war. Hell no, we won't go. And it started What did it involve? These youngsters taking a stance and saying, I am not going to pick up a gun, and I'm not going into another country and to kill somebody who has done nothing to me and has not in any way, shape, or form threatened my family. A lot of them did prison time, a lot of them. And when it came to the period of Vietnam, by then, we're talking about Puerto Ricans that were not only forced to go off to war on the island of Puerto Rico, but Puerto Ricans from different cities here in the United States. And one in particular, Oscar Lopez Rivera, who is our last remaining Puerto Rican political prisoner from our case, who has done over 30 years, is an ex-Vietnam vet. And I think he was able to develop a political awareness on Vietnam soil. Because he comments, he says, what I saw was a valiant group of people who didn't have the sophisticated weaponry that these U.S. soldiers were coming with, but they had heart. And with the little bit that they had, they were so creative. And at the final end, they embarrassed the United States government because they won. A small country. But it was the will. It was the will, which is the will that has to persist here. Because it isn't what these people in Wall Street go for. They want is money. They don't care if they ruin the lives of people. They don't care if they contaminate our air, our water, period. They don't care if the next generation doesn't have you guys could probably fill in the different types of adjectives that we want to leave for future generations. If that doesn't exist, what's going to happen? The next generation is going to blame us and say, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you speak out? Why did you protest? Why did you remain silent? And as political prisoners, that's basically where they go. They have you physically, but what they cannot rob from you is your spirit. They cannot rob your ability to say, I can resist, regardless of what the consequences are going to be. I think you find more freedom when you're able to say, I have the liberty to choose. And when you have the liberty to choose and know that there are other people next to you that take that same stance, that is power. And no matter how big the obstacle is, Vietnam did it. Vietnam is one of many examples that can be given here. Así que, to answer his story, how is it that Puerto Ricans are forced to fight in U.S. wars? It's because they slapped U.S. citizenship status on us. Did they ask us permission? No, not at all.
Hi, first of all, thank you for coming, Carolina. And last time that I was there, I was looking for some sort of energy for independence, some sort of movement, and all I found was repression. And the only messages that I saw for independence were spray painted on walls in Old San Juan, and maybe some videos on YouTube. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening now, and if you would have a message for the youth of Puerto Rico in terms of what they can do to fight the colonial status that Puerto Rico's in right now?
You're saying that you came from a town of Puerto Rico that's called Carolina, ¿verdad? and that's where you visited. And you're saying that in your stay, your short stay at Puerto Rico, you saw very little.
I used to live there.
Oh, you used to live there. Okay. She's saying, why isn't there more resistance? It's kind of like clandestine.
Visible resistance.
Visible.
I know that the FBI is a large part, plays a large part in that, but if you would have a message for youth in Puerto Rico right now, there needs to be more.
A message to the youth. I think the youth, especially the student movement, they shook the foundation. They definitely did. Puerto Rico, how many of you know of COINTELPRO? COINTELPRO started in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is used as experimental grounds for everything. COINTELPRO was used back in, I would say, kind of like sharpening their claws back in the 30s against the nationalist movement. During that period, we were almost close to a revolution. We were almost close to getting the United States out and winning our autonomy, our self-determination. They hit hard, extremely hard. So for the generation that knows COINTELPRO, you can be guaranteed that what they have left was and continues a lot of heavy marks. But it doesn't stop the resistance. It doesn't. And I think what's happening now here is what has been also awakening on the island of Puerto Rico. We are a colony. That colonialism develops a psychic, a dependency, a thing of saying, I fear if I act out. But deep down inside, people don't like what they see. Students manifested because of the tuition hike. The labor unions that were very, very strong in the 60s and the 70s and buffered the protest of workers, that has been broken. Not the people. Maestros, the Federation of Teachers, have been experiencing blow after blow after blow. They have weakened them. You go to the different schools on the island of Puerto Rico and you will see asbestos. You will see classrooms that are closed down. You will see curriculum that was once a dynamic tool to educate has been slashed. If any of you are teachers, or if any of you are mothers, fathers, with that ability to comprehend what happens when a country does not have a good educational system, that in the long run, generation after generation, begins to erode the integrity of a country, the integrity of a people. Everybody has a right to an education. I'm throwing these things, and it's a short kind of explanation. But if you look at the elderly, their pensions, those funds have been tapped into. A lot of the retired people, whether they were from the electrical company or whether they were teachers or whether they were from the water companies or whatnot, they're saying, where is my pension? If it has been tapped into, what am I going to live on, as I continue to get older? Does the government of Puerto Rico care? No, not at all. Not at all. And what we say in our language, esos son arroz y habichuela. That is our rice and beans. People who have worked these long long years under horrendous conditions, to this day do not know if they're going to have pension. My brother-in-law is a teacher. My brother-in-law has a master's. My brother-in-law has been unemployed on and off for over 5 years. He tried finding a job in Chicago, which gave him only a contract for 1 year. He tried going to New York, couldn't find one. He's back on the island of Puerto Rico, was able to work 1 year. And what did they tell him when he reported the following semester? They told him, sorry, but you don't have a position. All these false promises, all these false hope, which happens here too. And it happens over there. Because remember, Puerto Rico belongs to the United States. It's owned by the United States, but we are not part of it. We are in that limbo level. If you feel it here, please. There's one thing I can at least tell you, is what happens in Puerto Rico is even worse.
I'll say it in the microphone. I like what you said about that you want a sustainable Puerto Rican economy and not a dependent economy. And I was actually down there for 10 days at that's my girlfriend right there. We went down and visited for 10 days back in the summer. And what struck me is how many, like the dominance of the U.S. corporations. And also how I feel like pretty much everything there is imported. Like everything is imported into the island. And also that there's, I think, 4 million people living on the island. And it's at a point now where I just feel like their economy is totally dependent on the U.S. And so I guess my question is, what would some kind of sustainable economy transition look like? Because I really feel like it's a dire situation regarding the dependent economy.
It's a forced economy. It's never something that we've ever wanted. We've struggled against that. That's why I stand here as an ex-political prisoner. How I see it, I come from a family who were farmers. If you look at the farmers today, they are frustrated because they've been taken. What has been removed from them is the most precious thing, more precious than gold. It is their seeds, the seeds. So a sustainable economy, which is something that's happening now, is people are reverting, going back to the land. People are trying to get off the grid, off buying into consumerism, getting off of trying to become a slave to credit cards. That is not easy. But it's trying to make that mental shift that is so important, which I think is the new wave for the future. So you find pockets throughout the island among the youth that are tapping on the shoulders of the older generation and telling them, teach me about the land. Teach me where I can get seeds. Teach me how I can plant in a much more connected to nature. That, to me, is powerful. It might not appear powerful, but it has future. It's changing values. It's going back to a thing of, I need my neighbor. It is a collective. It is a communal. It's starting to look at the land and saying, I'm going to protect it. On the island of Puerto Rico, there is this argument among the politicians that we have to reduce our dependency to oil. Well, that makes sense. But what's the hidden agenda? They want to bring and establish a natural, ¿cómo se dice?
Pipeline.
The gas pipeline. Well, everybody's saying, yeah, we don't want to be dependent on oil. But then the next, ¿cómo?
Middle class in China.
I don't know how to answer that one. But in Puerto Rico, they want to bring a natural... Yeah. Well, you would have to say that last word. Well, you'll have to ask a Chinese fellow, because what I'm trying to discuss is on Puerto Rico. But that natural gas line, it is not an alternative. That natural gas line is a way for corporations to gobble up money. It is to gobble up because there's a lot of lobbying taking place. There's companies that are being contracted by the government to begin evacuating people. They evacuate and at the same time make lots of money. This gas line has not even gone through its last stages of approval, and they're already saying at the table, let's feast. And let's feast hearty before any barriers stop us from preventing to go forward. Whose money is it? It's the people's money. It is.
How did you handle being a political prisoner?
How did I handle being a political prisoner and criticized at the same time? I had integrity. I had integrity, and I could defend myself. I could defend my position. Not me, but alongside me are my ancestors. And they are not just Puerto Rican ancestors. I live in this globe, and I learn from my African brothers and sisters. I learn from my Native American brothers and sisters, like I learned from my Central American and Caribbean brothers and sisters, and throughout the world. There's that international solidarity. We might have a particular history, but we all have lots in common. More in common than things that separate us.
Being rather ignorant, with the statehood a viable option worthwhile, or is independence one of the only? Is that the only option that's worthwhile?
For me, statehood is not an option. No. Puerto Ricans have a culture, they have an identity, they have a history. Statehood would mean to be part of a territory where I will be a minority. I do not wish to be a minority, and I don't think any of my ancestors would go for it. And if they could become present in this physical world, they would probably shake us, probably give us a lecture as to say, you cannot allow this for the next generation. You can't. Statehood, no. No. We're part of the Caribbean. We are Latin American, and we should be respected, you know what I mean, for voicing that and struggling toward that. Yo hablo mi idioma. So, does that answer your question? Yeah. a lot of times, if you have an opportunity to talk to the local people, not politicians, because the politician, all they see is money. And they're already corrupt.
Right.
They are corrupt.
And,
But if you go down to the local people,
what you got for me?
and regardless of what,
What you got for me?
it's
What you got for me today? Today. What did you offer me today? What? You steal my house? The city? I'm here because I cannot get $200 they have in my access card because the working system takes 7 to 10 days to send me a car. I'm hungry and Occupy feeling is feeling today. I don't got no shoes and I receive a government check. I have to wait the first to go back to my life, to survive. I have to go in the trash can, I have to go to the library. If Occupy feeling my kids don't feed me, I will not eat. I have to go to the trash. What can you do for me today? Hello people, wake up. This is reality. I've been here since the first. My kids can show. That's the only offer you got. I have a house in Orlando, Florida. I have 4 professional kids. Hello, my check, everybody. Today I went to the Social Security and to the first, I cannot feed myself. I had to be here 24/7. Ask my kids.
I don't mean to represent something you don't like.
No, I'm not, it's just I'm hungry because today
Damita.
I cannot
Permiso,
myself.
permiso, permiso.
Hello, I got the same respect for you there, but when you're talking, okay, politicians, what can you do today for these people? Stop this. What can you do for the homeless? They are hungry, really hungry, in the street. The ones that are outside here, sleeping in a school tent, they have issues. Why can you go and feed them? Feed them. Go over there and give them a plate. Give them water. Put it there next to them. Don't worry about what they are. Just feed them. Give them what they need. You don't have to give them money, give them food, clothes, and that's it, shoes. Please. I wasn't asked for this. I was born in America. I'm sorry. That's what you have to remember. We don't ask for this. We were born. Somebody signed something, a Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. We don't ask for this. I came here for a treatment of cancer, osteoarthritis. I'm dying right now. I don't know how much time I got. What can you do? A lot of people, a lot of homeless people are the same. They got mental issues, but everybody's shoving and shoving. I'm tired. I gave up today. I want to die. I want to kill myself. I am a nerd. My children, I block my children. I do what I choose. Yeah, in Florida. I got a mansion over there. No? No, sir, listen to me. My professional daughter.
Get back on course.
Permiso. I think what we're seeing here, you know what I mean, is an outcry. It is. These are voices. And I think even though it's just, you know, a dialogue that's taking place, I respect people being able to look for a forum. Because this Occupy Now is actually pointing to the 1% that is causing not just one issue, it is causing multiple problems on this globe. It goes beyond Philadelphia. It definitely does. That's why Occupy Now has to remain focused and keep that finger pointed to the 1%. And they have to commit themselves to a change. And it can't be rewarding themselves. It has to give relief to the massive people, that 99%. It is global. Así que I thank you very much. I hope it was informative. I'm going to go back to the island of Puerto Rico, and I'm going to feel very happy to say that I was part of this few hours here in Philadelphia with you here on Occupy Now. Thank you. Thank you very much. The question is that basically how was I released? That was back in 1999. President Bill Clinton gave us conditional clemency, but it came about as a result of international solidarity. It came about by the power of the people, the power to be able to stick together and to focus on what the real issues were. And the real issue in our case was that the United States was and continues to be in complete violation of international law. As long as Puerto Rico remains a colony, it needs to understand that the international community will continue to voice that it is in in violation of international law. Vieques, the way that the Viequenses and the Puerto Ricans were able to remove that largest U.S. naval base in the Western Hemisphere was coming together. It looked like an impossible opportunity. It took 60-some years, but the people never gave up. We are a colony. We've been a colony for over 113 years. Is that going to stop us from continuing to demand our independence? No. Nada. Thank you.